Hello class, welcome to our lesson today. This is the first day of 2 dealing with two-step inequalities. This is section 4.4. There really isn't a whole lot new in terms of solving two-step inequalities, but what I want to focus in on today is some things with area and perimeter and volume, and make sure we know how to set some things up. So that's going to be our main focus for today. First thing I want you to do is to try out these 4 questions. These are all inequality questions that should have one step shown, and then when you solve it, okay, then don't forget that you should be able to graph them with the open and closed circle in which direction they should go, if asked. If you look at these 4 questions, the most common mistake is on number 4. So like 1 and 2, number 1, you should subtract 9 on both sides. Number 2, you add 3 to both sides. You subtract or add 2 to both sides on number 3. But on number 4, it's multiplication. You have to divide by -3. And remember, when you divide by a negative, everything flips around. Okay, that's what a negative sign does to everything. It flips it to its other side. And so then you get x less than -5/3 or -1 2/3. Okay, either of those options would work well for that answer. But don't forget to flip the sign when you multiply or divide by a negative. Notice I didn't have to worry about that on the first 3 questions because they're all adding and subtracting. Okay. A lot of what we're going to look at is just some setups. We're going to not focus as much on the second bullet point, which is what are some values that would satisfy this inequality. We're going to focus on getting it set up instead. So this says you want to find the values of x so that the area of the rectangle is more than 22 square units. So area is length times width, so that would be 4 times the quantity x plus 3 has to be greater than, more than, the area of 22. You'll notice here that none of these 4 answers match this as it's written. So what they've done is distributed the 4. Okay, so that's why it's 4x plus 12, because you take 4 times x and 4 times 3, and that's the left side of your inequality. Notice here the difference between this first one here and the one below it has an equal sign, but we don't need that equal sign because it says it has to be more than. The next one says you want the perimeter of a rectangle. Now don't forget, perimeter is 2 of the lengths and 2 of the widths. So 2 times 4, notice I have that piece, and then 2 times x plus 3. I distribute the 2 into the group, and I get 8 plus the 2x plus the 6. And then you can only combine like terms. So 8 plus 6 would be 14. And that's why it's 2x plus 14. It says has to be greater than or equal to, which is why we have a greater than symbol or an equal to. I've noticed that some people have the right ideas if the symbol's are already given to you, but when it's written out like this, some people put the symbols the wrong way. Remember, read left to right. That piece, 2x plus 14, is more than or greater than or equal to the 28. For the next one, it says the area of a parallelogram, fewer than 41, so we know it's less than 41. On a parallelogram, don't forget it's to find the area, it's base times height, and so the height always has to make a right angle, similar to what triangles require. So that's y plus 7, and then 5 is the base. If you have more questions about why this formula works, you could look something up online or ask me about it, and I can get you some more info about why the area is what it is. It deals with moving things around and making a rectangle out of it, but it's always the base times the height, but those things have to make a right angle. And then distribute the 5, you get 5y plus 35 less than 41. For the next one, it's the area of a trapezoid. Okay, a trapezoid, okay, an area you might not know off the top of your head, but probably should write it down somewhere. 1/2 base 1 plus base 2 times the height. Again, if you have more questions about why that's the area formula for a trapezoid, we'll probably talk a little bit more about that later on in the school year. But it really comes down to 2 triangles. So if you're interested in where that formula comes from, there's plenty of information online that you could find that would help explain that. So I've got 1/2. The base one is the lower base. Okay, that's z plus 6, z plus 6. But then I have a plus z here because if this side at the bottom is z, this is also z at the top. And then the height has to make a right angle, which is the 10. So that makes it 2z plus 6 if I combine like terms inside this parentheses. I decided to do associative property of multiplication and multiply how I would like. So I took 1/2 times 10 and got 5 first, and then distribute it, and that's how you get the 10z plus 30. Notice it says at most 100, so that would be less than or equal to. So my focus when I was setting this up was just to write the equation for the area of a trapezoid, and then add in the fact it's at most 100 square units, which means it has to be less than or equal to. For this next one, it says the volume is at least 50, so that's a greater than or equal to, so you'll notice it's got to be this version. But length times width times height, 3 times 5 is 15 times the x plus 2. Don't forget you have to distribute. I get a lot of students that answer this last one because they say, oh, it's 15x plus 2, but it's 15 times the quantity x plus 2. So you got to make sure you multiply the 15 into both pieces. Don't forget volume of box is pretty easy. Length times width times height to find the answer. Next one, volume again of the prism. So you do length times width times height. You can choose the order in which you multiply them. So my suggestion would be take 4 times 4.5 first, then times the 2x plus 1. Notice it says no more than, so it's got to be a less than or equal to. Remember, more than would be greater than, so this has to be less than or equal to in order to find that answer. It should be 36x plus 18, less than or equal to 36. Now, for all of those questions, we were just setting them up. So let's take a moment and go through a problem about solving the inequality and graphing its solution. So what you'll notice here is this is similar to 4x plus minus 8 equals 12. It just has a greater than or equal to symbol. The rules are identical. You do the same idea as two-step equations. So to get rid of minus 8, you put plus 8 on both sides. That gives me 4x. Don't put an equal sign here, though, because it's a greater than or equals to sign. Equals 20. Then divide both sides by 4, x greater than or equal to 5. That corresponds to a closed circle at 5 and an arrow going to the right. Remember, you need at least 3 numbers on your number line. The middle one below, one above. 0, we know where it's at. 0 is somewhere down here to the left on this question. But we don't have to know necessarily exactly where that number is. We just know it's to the left of where my numbers are as written. Other than that, the main thing that you want to keep track of is when you divide by negative or multiply by negative, you got to flip the inequality sign. Other than that, if you've been good at showing your 2 steps in previous chapters, that should go fairly well here as we're looking at this scenario. Okay, and the good news is there's no other homework tonight. Tomorrow we're really going to get at it with these 2-step equations and make sure we understand what we're looking at. I wanted to make sure to introduce those area and volume and perimeter questions. So one thing that you might want to look at is just making sure you know those formulas. And if you don't, I'd write them down and have them in one place. And that should help you as you move forward. Have a good day, everyone.